Standard form graphing. So to start with, you want to know what is standard form. Well, standard form is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Just like in vertex form, when our a value is bigger than 0, it's going to open up. And when a is less than 0, it's going to open down. My axis of symmetry is the same as in vertex form. It's where the graph folds. And how we're going to find that is the equation negative b divided by 2a. Okay, so that's going to be our x-coordinate of the vertex also. It's going to be x equals negative b over 2a. So when you do negative b over 2a, it's going to answer two different questions. What is the axis of symmetry and what is my x-coordinate? The y-coordinate is going to be to plug x in and solve. And then our y-intercept, where it hits the y-axis, is going to be our c value. So then your steps that you want to do to graphing this, you want to identify a, b, and c. You want to determine the shape. And what I mean by that is if it goes up or if it goes down. Then I want my axis of symmetry. Then you should find your vertex. And remember that that's going to be an x, y ordered pair. Next, I want to plot my y-intercept. Then you need to reflect that point. And we're going to add in one more to that. Step 7 is one more point to the right. And then from there, reflect. Okay, so this is going to give us 5 total points that we want to work with. So let's look at these examples. Okay, so our first thing is to identify a, b, and c. So a is 1, b is negative 4, and c is 1. Step 2 is to determine our shape. Well, because our a value is 1 and it's positive, it's going to open up. So then 3 is to find the axis of symmetry. So negative b over 2a. So the opposite of b in this case. So it was negative 4, so it's going to become 4 divided by 2 times 1. So we have 4 divided by 2, which is 2. Okay, so that tells us two different things. It tells us our axis of symmetry is at 2, and it's the x-coordinate of the vertex. So I can go ahead and graph 2 right there. That's my dotted line that everything's going to be symmetrical to. Okay, so part 4 is to find the rest of our vertex. So to do that, we know that 2 is our first value, and we're looking for our second value. We're going to plug it back into the equation. So 2 squared minus 4 times 2 plus 1. So I get 4 minus 8 plus 1, which this is going to give me a negative 4 plus 1, which is negative 3. So that is the y part of the vertex. So I'm going over 2 and down 3. Okay, so my next part, part 5, is my y-intercept. So to find the y-intercept, well, that's just my c value. And my c value here is 1. So it's at y equals 1. So I go to the y-axis and go up to 1. Okay, so here's what I know. This is 2 away from the pink dotted line. 1, 2. So I'm going to go 2 away on the other side. So those are reflected of each other. So that point is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. If you were asked for your reflected point. So then that's step 5 and 6. So then step 7 is one more point to the right. Well, if we were making an XY table of this, we already have a point at 2, and we have a point at 4. So we need the missing point of 3. So we're going to plug 3 into our equation for x, because that's 1 to the right. So think about this. Here is where our vertex was. Here's 1 to the right. Here's 2 to the right. Okay, so wherever that is, move it 1 or 2 that way. So I'm plugging this in, and I get 3 squared minus 4 times 3 plus 1, 9 minus 12 plus 1. So negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. So this is the ordered pair, 3, negative 2. So from the origin, I go over 3 and down 2. This is 1 away, so I'm going to go 1 away on this side. All right, now I have 5 points, so I have my parabola graphed. Next example, same thing here, finding our vertex to begin with. So we're going to do negative b over 2a. Well, the opposite of b, our b value is 2, so it's negative 2 divided by 2 times our a value, which is negative 2. So I get negative 2 over negative 4, which is positive 1/2. So here's what that does then. That 1/2 is our axis of symmetry, and it's also the x part of our vertex. So at 1/2, I can go ahead and put my dotted line, which is almost at a half. Not quite. It could stand to move over just a little bit. So that is halfway between 0 and 1. Okay? So now I need to plug 1/2 back in. So I'm going to do negative 2 times 1/2 squared plus 2 times 1/2 minus 5. Well, 1/2 squared gives me 1/4 because it's 1/2 times 1/2. 2 times 1/2 is 1 minus 5. Well, negative 2 times 1/4 is negative 1/2 plus 1 minus 5. Okay, so when I put those together, I get negative 4.5. I don't really like to go between fractions and decimals, but it helps you kind of know where it is rather than to say like 9/2. That would be a little bit trickier. Okay, so going over 1/2 puts us on this pink line, and going down 4.5 goes 1, 2, 3, 4.5 is right there. My y-intercept on this is at negative 5 because it's my c value. So that is y equals negative 5. Okay, so here's 5 right there. So I'm a half a box away, so I'm going to go a half a box this way. So my reflected point is really 1, negative 5. And then remember that we need 5 points in order to graph this. So we were at a half, and then we went to 1. Well, our next box over would be to go to 2. So we want to plug in x equals 2. So when we plug that in, we get negative 2 times 2 squared plus 2 times 2 minus 5. Okay, so that's going to give me a positive 4 plus 4 minus 5. And then negative 8 plus 4 minus 5 gives me a negative 9. So that is the ordered pair 2, negative 9. Okay, over to 2, down to 9 is right here. That's 1.5 away. So we're going to go a half and 1 away on this side. So now we have our 5 points and can make our parabola from that. This one, starting vertex, negative b over 2a. The opposite of b is going to be a positive 2, divided by 2 times 1. So 2 over 2 is 1. So what does that mean? That means that I can put my dotted line along 1. Okay, so then I'm going to plug 1 back into my equation. X equals 1 is going to go back in there. So I get 1 squared minus 2 times 1 plus 2. Well, 1 squared is 1 minus 2 plus 2. Those are going to add up to 0. So I get 1. So this is the ordered pair, 1, 1. That's my vertex. Over 1, up 1. So now I want my point to the right. So here's my vertex. Here is 1 point to the right. There's my next point to the right. We can do our c value first. So our y-intercept is our c value, which in this case is y equals 2. Okay, so this is 1 away, so we're going to go 1 away here. So we've already done this one. We don't need to do that one. So our next one to the right is to plug in 3. So we're going to plug in x equals 3 and do 3 squared minus 2 times 3 plus 2. So I get 9 minus 6 plus 2. So I get 3 plus 2, which is 5. So that is the point 3, 5. Over 3, up to 5. This one is 1, 2 away, so I'm going to go 1, 2 this way. And now you have all of your points, so you can make your parabola from that. And now you're good to go.